Awesome. Okay, so our broadcast should now be starting. So first I want to welcome everyone and thank you all so much for joining us. But I want to start with a trivia question. Our chat box is open for all of you listening.
Okay.
Our chat box is open for our attendees. And my question is, which US president was the first to nationally recognize Black History Month? And so that question will be going in a chat box, and attendees, if you can just type in your responses. And again, without using Google or the internet or asking a friend, the question is, which US president was the first to nationally recognize Black History Month? So that's the question. Go ahead and type in your responses, attendees, and I will get to that answer shortly. But for now, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all again for joining us. This is our first City of Eastvale Black History Month awareness conversation. And listening in with us is our Team Eastvale members. We have our council and commissioners and our city staff. So thank you all so much for tuning in. For those of you who I have not had, my name is Anissa Lewis. I am the communication specialist here with the city, and I'm joined with Gina. Gina, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, and thank you to all of our panelists and everyone that's listening. Thank you for taking time out of your day to celebrate with us Black History Month. My name is Gina Gibson Williams. I am the Community Development Director for the City of Eastvale. I'm going to be your moderator for today. So thank you, and I'm excited to hear what will happen.
Yes, so we're going to go ahead and introduce our panel. We have amazing guests with us, and we're so very thankful to you all for taking time out of your day to have this conversation with Team Eastvale. So panel, I'm just going to call you out one by one as I see you on my screen, and if you can just let our audience know who you are, what it is that you do, serve or have served our Eastvale community. And I would start with Pastor James Turner.
Hello, and so grateful to be here on today. Again, I'm James Turner. I pastor Eastvale Bible Church. I've been a resident of Eastvale for almost 15 years. My children go to Eastvale schools. They've been to Roosevelt and River Heights and Eastvale Elementary. I'm a former parole agent for the state, retired, and now I've been pastoring full time. And so grateful to be here. Eastvale stamped all over my life and all over my family. And so again, so grateful to be a part of this historic step for Eastvale.
Yes, it is.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. And Safari K, how about you?
Hi, I'm Safari K, known as Safari K. My name is Trotman. I own a safari company in Africa, hence the name Safari K. I've been an Eastvale resident since way before Eastvale started, so since about 18 years now, I guess. And I actually love Eastvale.
Awesome, thank you. And Dr. Goins?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to Anissa and the city, Gina and the city for this awesome opportunity. I appreciate you all for doing this. My name is Jeremy Goins. I am the former principal at Eleanor Roosevelt High School in the beautiful city of Eastvale. So did that for 8 years. Was able to help serve the capacity and the Corona Unified School District in that capacity. And now I am the administrative director for instructional support for the Corona Unified School District. And just again, thank you so much. I'm fired up to be here. And oh, by the way, I was a history teacher back in the day. It's been a while now, but my degree is in social studies and history. So really thankful we're having this conversation.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for being here. And Shaunica, how about you?
Hi, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be before you this afternoon. I'm Shaunica Johnson. I'm a land use consultant, and I provide consulting services to the city of Eastvale. My family, along with Ms. Kay, has been in Eastvale before it was Eastvale, so we've been here as well for 18 years. We're happy to be here. I'm also a college professor at Cal Poly Pomona, and I teach courses in land use, diversity, and politics, and trying to understand the impacts of gaining more women in the area of political economy and how diversity, or the lack thereof, affects our entire economy. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And we are trying to get Alex Frazier on the line, so he'll be joining us shortly. But thank you, and welcome again. Thank you all so much for joining us. So I'm just going to get started with a very brief overview of Black History Month. So for those who don't know, Black History Month started as a week. It started as Negro History Week in 1926 by Carter G. Woodson. And it was a week in February that included the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two of the key figures in the abolition movement, the end of slavery in our country. And trivia answer, it was until 1976 when President Ford officially recognized Black History Month, and it has been nationally recognized ever since. So for me personally, growing up, Black History Month was about representation. You know, it was that time where you see and hear about stories from people that look like me and my family. And now as an adult, Black History Month to me is a time of celebration of Black excellence, Black achievements, and progression. And that's what I really love about this month and Black History Month, and celebrating and honoring. What about you, Gina? What is Black History Month to you?
Well, I think it's, for me, relative what you shared with the group about it being in 1976, because I actually was in school at that time, and what was so important to me was the duality of it, that we had to have something separate for African Americans when our history is so intertwined with American history, and how it wasn't until I took my college course at UCLA where there was the in-depth history of all things culture, media, government, science, all of the contributions of African Americans. And it was just the fact that there was this absence in my formal educational training, which didn't come to fruition until, a college course at UCLA, the one that they offered. I just thought was odd, when I was coming up and being learning to be a young professional. And I just look forward to the day when the history that was absent for me and still wasn't in the history books for my daughter would actually be in the history books in the future.
Awesome. And I think we have Alex in the audience. Alex, are you able to, we can't see you, but are you able to hear us and say something?
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Perfect. So we can't see you.
Yeah.
Loud and clear. So we didn't get to do the introduction for you, but if you can just introduce yourself to the audience and let us know who you are, what it is that you do, and how you serve our Eastvale community.
Hi. I actually was on when you did that, but for some reason I can't get my video on. It might be user error, but I'm Alex Frazier. I'm a Los Angeles Police Department officer. Lived in the community about 7-8 years. I'm also on the Eastvale Little League board and a member of the inclusionary task force. I am a big volunteer in the community, trying to get the community together. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So I think we're going to go ahead and open the panel up for discussion. So I'll let you lead that, Gina.
All right, let's get started. So the first question that I have for the panel, and I would say there are 5 panelists, and so I will call out, we've mixed up the order so we can make sure that each person gets an opportunity to speak first. So The first question is, what does Black History Month mean to you? And secondly, do you believe knowing and understanding Black success and Black history is important today in 2021? So Dr. Goins, would you mind starting off the conversation?
No, thank you. Thanks. It's a great question. And for me, Black History Month, I think, Gina, very similar to your answer, where my first deep understanding of Black history was when I got into college, and how that just, enthralled me, and just gave me a real sense of not just who I was, but how Black Americans contribute to this wonderful country, right? And that was such a powerful experience. I think it's so important for our students to feel that on all levels, right? Not just in college, and all levels. And it would be great if our students all felt that way throughout their educational journey. But we know that's just not true right now. And so starting that as a month rather than a part of the larger picture is a great starting point. And that I will that I would say would like more, of course, but I think it's really important. The last piece that I'll say about that in terms of our students is, I spent some time speaking with our students this summer after George Floyd was killed, and really hearing from 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and how it was really on their heart that they felt that Black success, Black history wasn't celebrated, was something that when you can hear that from the mouth of a 16-year-old, that's a pretty powerful thing to know that although they appreciate the nods to Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and those that you typically hear about in Black History Month, it wasn't near enough for them, right, to really feel like they're getting the real picture. And so I just think it's so important that we do our best to go deep with Black History Month, and then just history in general, the African American journey.
All right, thank you, Dr. Goins. Ms. Johnson, would you care to give your answer to that question?
Black History Month for me means celebrating not only Black culture, Black art, Black accomplishments, and contributions to the American society, but the way I look at it is having an opportunity to celebrate American culture. At times for me, it's a struggle of trying to separate Black History Month from American culture, because to me it should be interdispersed in between our daily lives. In my opinion, I think although I welcome and celebrate Black History Month, and I'm so happy to have a month where we celebrate all the great accomplishments of African Americans, I think that it would be wonderful if this could be as a part of our daily life, just like we are breathing, walking, talking, eating. We're always celebrating the accomplishments of Americans, where we're not necessarily just African Americans, but where we're looked at as we are Americans who have really contributed to our society. And what it means for me is not only, as Dr. Goins said, making it a great point to really put it throughout all areas of education, but also talking about the accomplishments, the achievements, the contributions of African Americans to our friends who may not be African American. Opening up the conversation. How do we have these hard conversations that may be a little bit difficult or sometimes a little bit uncomfortable? So making it a space that feels safe, but also a space that is open to truth, that's open to honesty, and open to awareness. Because I think if we start to think about it in those terms, then it doesn't feel so difficult. It doesn't necessarily have to be a month. And I'm hoping that we'll get to the point in place, not where we'll eradicate Black History Month. So I definitely want to make sure I'm clear on saying that. But where we're talking about Black achievement, African American achievement, the African diaspora achievement, even outside of the United States, on a continuum. And that's what it really means to me. When I talk about the accomplishments of African American people or Black people from the entire diaspora with my family and with my children, it's something that I'm thinking about on a daily basis. So I'm hoping that we can start to think about, especially for people who are in positions of power, and thinking about arts and culture, how do we make this a part of our mainstream dialogue on a regular daily basis? And so that when Black History Month comes, it's just an icing on the cake, right? It's just an extra exuberant celebration of who we are as American people.
Thank you, Shaunica Johnson. That's excellent. I will go next to Pastor Turner. Would you share with the group, please?
Yes, I think what's already been said is just so wonderful because I think of Black History Month. For me, it's like an introduction. It's a highlight where we want to make people who may be unaware of African American contributions throughout all our history. You know, one thing, one of my daughters went to HBCU, and then another daughter went to Baylor. So they had different college experiences. And like Shaunica said, and Dr. Goins, my first introduction to really Black history was in college. Although I went to school in Watts, I went to Verbum Day High School in Watts, I still had no real formal education on Black history. And what we start to understand is that Black history is not February. It is across the whole landscape of America from the beginning till now. We are Black history. So again, I think of it as an introduction, a highlight, because we are Black history. We are making Black history. It's not just Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. It's not just highlighting who invented this or this Black person invented that, but the whole tableau of history has been infused with African American contributions. But really quick, one thing that our churches we just started a study called "Where Are the Black People in the Bible?" We do that every Wednesday. Dr. Waters from Azusa Pacific shares that. And one thing we talk about is hard for us to identify being a part of something if we don't see ourselves in that. And so we need to see our positive contributions to this society that we love, America. We need to see our again who we are, and I believe that starts to kind of change how our students, how our children see themselves and what they're capable of accomplishing. So I see Black history. It's an introduction. I want to see it as just like you said, something we highlight, but the big picture is 12 months a year.
Thank you, Pastor Turner. Mr. Frazier, would you share with the group the answer to that question, your experience?
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I apologize again. I'm over here working hard trying to get this screen on. I don't know what's going on. But Black history to me is just reminding me where we come from. Proudly, my mom and my grandmother and all my elders frequently told me about the hard things they went through growing up in the South, dealing with other cultures that didn't accept them based off of what their great grandparents believed in and things of that nature. All of these things that was seen on TV, all the implicit biases that they grew up with, and assumptions of who they were before people got to know them. Those things they stayed in me and reminded me to make sure I gave forth my authentic self to everybody that I met, to let them know who I was. And it was more than just my skin color. And then I did the same with them. It doesn't matter where they were from, doesn't matter what nationality, what gender. I wanted to know who you are and what you're all about. And so everything said on this panel, I agree with. I'll fast forward a little bit to the great things that are going on right now in our city. There's a panel of people here on this screen, those listening in, and all the ones in the community doing all this work. It's a positive step forward that we're starting off 2021 in a positive way to start hitting every culture on the way throughout the city, on the way throughout the year, leaving 2020 behind. And we're all being active and trying to pursue that same similar goal. And that's what we really want. We want to all join hands together and make Black history part of the whole year, and make every other culture's history part of the whole year. So that way we're learning from each other, we're loving each other, and we're getting closer to each other.
Excellent. Thank you. Kay, would you also share your response to that question?
I will. I think everyone's pretty much said what I would say, and I echo pretty much everything that they've said. But I think Black history is also is a 12-month history. It's not just 1 month. Obviously, we celebrate during this time, and we celebrate the contributions of Black Americans, you know, throughout our history. And but it's also getting to know yourself. It's getting to know what you've been through. It's actually educating, you know, friends and neighbors and even yourself about how far we've come and how far they think we have to, or we think, or they think we have to go. I mean, there's a reason that we're in this conversation. You know, over the years, so many things have happened that it's difficult for us to share with people who don't really see what we're talking about. And that's the thing we have to be able to do. We have to educate people if they're willing to listen, obviously, because there's a reason why we talk about Black history, and there's a reason why we talk about how we've been disenfranchised or shunned or called out for who we are. And the difference between is on the exterior. That's it. We all have different thoughts and everything, but so we are the same. And, you know, looking at it from the perspective of a Black woman and success, I think Black history really is extremely important because we don't learn about the people that we really need to learn about. Everybody's mentioned Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, you know, Malcolm X and so forth. There are so many people who've made contributions, you know, to the world, you know, not to just Blacks, just to the world. And we want people to understand that we as a Black people, we're very proud of that, obviously, but we also want them to understand where we are when we say Black Lives Matter, so that we don't get the same kind of rhetoric all the time. Well, my life matters too, you know. So people really truly understand what we're talking about when we make reference to things like that, you know, and activist groups, and not to believe that every Black group is a terrorist organization. You know, I think we just really have to understand and make people understand. And I've talked to many people during this time, whites, who do not really understand where I'm coming from, or do not understand that I've had to live by different rules. You know, I never learned Black history in school. I mean, I graduated at a time there was no Black history. I was living Black history. I graduated when, you know, I mean, during the time of the Black Panthers, you know, when the whole world was going crazy with Black groups, you know. So I just think it's a lot of education, and I think it will continue to be education, you know. And I think that we need to kind of realize that there are things that are still different today. There are still things that we are treated differently, you know, than others, and that's a reality. I wish it wasn't, but that is a reality. And you know, I've lived in that kind of environment, and I've lived it. So that's what I think about Black history.
Thank you, Kay. Wow, we've heard some powerful information about people and their experiences. So thank you, panel. I think we're learning a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to go on to the second question.
Yeah, so a lot of points that have been made already is that Black history is encompassing of so much. It's, you know, it's not just the civil rights movement. It's not just Black inventors. It's now too, it's not just history, like Pastor Turner's point, you know, we are Black history, we're living it out. So since it's encompasses so much, one of the important components of Black History Month is that there's a theme each year to kind of help you guide discussions. And I think, for example, last year's theme, the theme of 2020 was the Black vote. And this year's national theme for Black History Month is the Black family, focusing on representation, identity, and diversity. So I'm going to read a statement. The Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which decides the theme each year, says Black family has been reverenced, stereotyped, and vilified from the days of slavery to our own time. So, to ask the panel, when we think about this theme of the Black family, what is your take on how Black families have historically been represented, and how might you compare it to now? And I think, Alex, you're on the line, so I'd like to start with you in this discussion.
Okay, I'm here. To me, Black families, yes, they have been misrepresented. I think there are, just like every culture, there are some. I'll start with men that don't hold up to their responsibilities. I didn't grow up with a father in my household, and it kind of I longed for that. It was something that stayed on my mind, and I always wanted that and didn't know why. And I always told myself once I had kids that I wouldn't do that to my kids. I would do everything I could, whether I was still with the mother or not. I would build that relationship to show them what a real man is supposed to be like and what a family is supposed to be. With my wife and kids now, I try to show them by example how we respect each other. I even have it on my Alexa. Every night it plays, "We are the Fraziers. We respect each other. We love each other, and we take care of each other. Fraziers are the best." It says it every night at 8 o'clock. So it lets the kids know that, hey, we have family pride, family unity. We take care of each other. We love each other. And I want them to know that no matter what, our family is the most important thing, second to God. God first, and our family. So that's something I drill in them. And on a bigger scale, I think that if more men, particularly Black men, because we're talking about Black men, lead by example and take care of their families the same way, I think it will get rid of that stigma to our past.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Pastor Turner, what about you and your thoughts on the Black family?
Like 15 minutes.
I believe that the Black family is like the centerpiece of turning things around for the Black community. You know, I had a nuclear family. My wife had a family where her father was absent, just like Alex shared. And so the big deal is I wanted our children to have both parents, because family in the Black community is huge. It is huge. And so what we've seen, some of the effects of from slavery to racism has been the breakdown of the Black family. And so we want to be able to reclaim that. And I think part of that is understanding our identity, understanding that we should not be shaped by the images we see on TV. We should not be shaped by racist propaganda. We should not be shaped by what other people say we are. We should not be shaped by those stereotypes. And that's what I think that when we talk about Black excellence, those are the things that need to be put forward. When we can see, a Dr. Goins represented in as a principal in Eastvale, we can see, these panelists doing positive things, and I do believe, just like Safari K said, that we don't highlight enough of ordinary people that are doing things to strengthen the Black community, to strengthen the family. I was a probation officer and I was a parole agent. And so I saw the breakdown of the family as a result of the criminal justice system. And the effects are just so clear. And so I think we really need to for especially African Americans, really focus on rebuilding those family values that have held us together through slavery, through racism. It was the family that was the core. I know a lot of times we say it was the church, it was the community, but it was the family core, big mama and uncles and aunties that came together to make sure that maybe we may not have had a college education, but we putting our pennies together, we're sending you to school. We now have started to see that, but we need to make those same kind of sacrifices for our children to make sure they understand who they are and the importance of the family. Everybody, I love what Alex said, should have a family mantra, right? To let the family know you are important, you are valuable. And so that's
Yeah.
just my thoughts on it. We need to reclaim that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Goins, how about your thoughts on the Black family?
Yeah, I'll be quick, but I just want to say thanks to all the panelists, because this is inspirational. I know I'm going home and starting to mess with my Alexa and figure out how I get our family motto going. So thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think two things, real brief with the Black family. One, I think that it's important to recognize and point out the disservice that we do our nation when the Black family is portrayed as this dysfunctional entity, right? Now we know that in all communities that's present. This is real life, right? And so however, when folks that don't live in communities around other Black people, and that's what they see, and that really perpetuates these negative stereotypes, and I think that really is a larger picture or a larger problem. But I think what we should be celebrating are the things we talked about, some of the positives that James was talking about with Black families. And one of the things that I point out is the storytelling, like the historical storytelling that is culturally part of passing things down from generation to generation, of how folks before you lived is so important. And when I sit with my aunt and uncle from the South and hear their stories of how they grew up, we have to continue to pass on that to future generations. And I just think that's really an important positive trait of Black families we need to celebrate, the storytelling.
Awesome, thank you. Safari K.
Well, I think that Black families have historically been impacted in a lot of different ways. Way back in the beginning of slavery and so forth, obviously they were targets. They were targets because of the color of their skin. That was pretty much it. They didn't have to do anything bad. They were just Black families, And so my father's from the South. I grew up in Chicago, and he made it a point to tell me all of my life, really, that I had to make sure that I understood that I was going to encounter situations that would be that I would have to deal with. I didn't know exactly at the time what he was talking about until I encountered some of those situations where people would tell me to my face, "You're not welcome here," And I was young then. I still didn't quite understand it until I probably was a young adult, when I moved to California, and those were my first experiences. So it's really important. I don't even know if I instilled a lot of that in my own son, because at that time, people were not talking about Black history. They were just trying to survive because there were so many things going on that you had to be aware of. And it's hard to just sit down and talk about. I mean, the stories are one thing. My dad would tell me stories, but I would try to relate to my son some of the things that I saw in life. I used to work for HR and child support. And boy, I'm telling you, those were families that were torn apart from the very beginning, and there was no Black family, so to speak, because we were dealing with child support, and most of them were absent parents. Mm-hmm. So it really does have a huge impact. And I think parents have to be very aggressive in how they tell the story to their children so that they truly understand what it is that they may have to go through, or what it is in life that they will experience. I truly do.
Yeah, thank you. And Shaunica, how about you and your take on the Black family?
Thank you for asking. All the panelists have said so many great things that I've wanted to say, so I'll try not to repeat any of them because I feel like we're speaking of one heart and one mind here this afternoon. But I'd like to bring up two things which I think are very important. Number one, the media, and then number two, systemic bias, prejudice, and racism. So when we think about how the African American family has been impacted historically and even up until today, I think it would be remiss of all of us not to acknowledge some of the things that have really degraded the Black family, that has put it in some positions, depending on where you come from and what class that you actually reside in at this point, which brings you to a place where you're not as productive as we used to be or once was at one point. And then I also want to think about the media, right? So when we think about the media images of the Black family, how many of you can think of any shows that really portray positive images of the Black family? I can think of maybe a few, some that will probably date me when I think back to the Cosbys, because I still watch the old reruns, right? I love the mom and the dad. And just, the doctor and the lawyer, and who their whole life was really dedicated to building and raising great, productive, wonderful children. We have Grownish on television now, Mixedish, Blackish. We have a whole host of other shows. But then there are a lot of other shows that don't always portray the Black family like in a regular American family, an American family who hurts, who bleeds, who cries, who is successful, who falls, who is triumphant, all these different things. I think we have to think about the Black family as to how we're characterized, in American society and how that impacts us. And then also give us an opportunity to show people that we're just like you are. We have hopes and dreams for our children, just like you do. We are people of faith. We are people who are honest, who have, integrity, who are entrepreneurs, who are business people. The list could go on and on and on. So when I think about how we've been impacted historically with the Black family, I think a lot of it has to do with the images that are put on television. As a mother of two African-American boys who are in their teenage years now, when I turn on the television, I rarely see positive images of African-American men, let alone boys. And so it's always my job to really always be able to show them something positive outside of what's on the TV, because sometimes children tend to do what they reflect and see right in front of them. And then also their friends who come from multicultural backgrounds. Their friends are African-American, white, Asian, Indian, you name it. We really try to expose our children to the gamut of racial opportunities out there. I think really showing and portraying ourselves, our best selves, to folks, and inviting them to different family functions, just our regular daily life, whether that's just going to and from school, pickup, being a part of that mom group. I think all of these things, when we talk about the Black family, I just want to end by saying that we're just like any other family who is successful, who sometimes may not be, who, love their families, love their church, love their community, are civic minded. I think all of those things are important when we're talking about the Black family.
Okay.
Yeah. And Shaunica, I think that's a great segue into our next topic of discussion as well. And Gina, I think we should probably end with this third question, because we are running a little low on time. But I wanted to bring up something that I read. So in a recent article, a noted USC historian said, one of the things that I would love to see during Black History Month is moving away from just thinking about Black activists and leaders and thinking about what it is that normal people do every day, just in regards to combating inequality and moving toward, progress and inclusion and celebrating Black excellence. So just if you can all let us know very quickly what it is that, we can do every day to celebrate Black excellence and Black history on a daily basis. And for this, I'd like to start with Alex.
Mr. Frazier, before you start, we have about 6 minutes, so maybe a 1 minute response, and that'd be great, and everybody will get a chance.
If I could just ask
Yes, that's fine.
everybody,
Can you hear me?
you have an extra few minutes. This is such a great conversation. I'd love for people to stay on if you have an extra few minutes. You don't have to finish up in 6 minutes. I love this conversation that's occurring here and great awareness. So thank you for all the panelists. My name is Brian Jones, the city manager. I just wanted to come in and not stifle the conversation and cut it short if we have a little extra time. Thanks, Anissa, and thank you for the entire panel.
Mr. Frazier?
Can you hear him?
Alex?
It says
Did we lose him?
we might have.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, 1 minute, maybe, and share with us your thoughts on what we can do to progress every day toward this conversation about Black history.
Thank you for asking, Gina. I think for me, the greatest thing is education. And I'm not talking about education just as, you know, in our K through 12 or higher education, you know, going to get a bachelor's, master's, PhD, whatever it is that, you know, people are moving forward in, but really enlightening ourselves about who we are, trying to understand where we come from, understanding our familiar backgrounds, and then also reading constantly. So there's a couple books that I'm reading right now. One, I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera. See if I can show it to you. It is called What Racism Cost Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. It's by Dr. Heather McGee. She is a political sociologist and scientist, and she really talks about how inequality and racism not only impacts African American people or brown and Black people who are negatively impacted, but it impacts all people, and that when we really degrade one group of people, that as an American society financially it impacts us all. So it really looks at the American economy from the standpoint of racism. I'm also reading a book, which I think everyone may like, and I think I referenced it in my last talk that I gave for the city, called The Color of Law. It's a forgotten history of how our government segregated America by Richard Rothstein. And so I think it's important when we think about systemic racism, not only to kind of harp on the past, because I know some people have a hard time understanding, well, why are we talking about that, Shaunica? What's the big deal? But I think if we don't understand what happened in the past, somehow we can repeat it, even if we don't do it purposely. So I think it's important to read. And so even in my free time, I'm always looking for something to read. And then when I read it, buying those same books and sending them out to family members or friends, and just having a conversation when we're out at Victoria Gardens or at those lagos, you know, having a great cup of tea or just walking around and enjoying, we're having these types of conversations, even with my friends who don't look like me, my friends who are not African American, my friends who don't come from the same class or racial background. Opening up the conversation, I think, is what we can do. Read and open up the conversation. Thank you for asking.
Totally agree, 100%. And what about you, Safari K?
I like Shaunica's answer. It was really great. I tried to educate myself, you know, because I didn't study it in school, and I've tried to educate myself and others that I know, so that they will understand where we are in this world. I mean, because our skin doesn't have to be the predictor of a negative life or you know, incidents that happen in the news all the time. We are the same. We are the same, you know, and we do the same things that you do. We just have a different color of our skin, but that doesn't make us a different person. So it's really important, as Shaunica said, to educate ourselves, to educate those who are willing to listen to us about the things that we want to share with them. Because if we don't understand where we came from, we will never understand where we're going. You know, we have to understand that. We have to, when we talk to people, we have to get them to try to understand what our position is, because we don't know the emotional side of things that people go through. And I think that's very important.
Right, agreed. What about you, Dr. Goings?
Great answers, great answers. I love what Shaunica said around reading. I think it's super important. And I know that Ibram Kennedy's works, How to Be an Anti-Racist or Stamped, both give kind of deep histories of the Black experience. And what that I think really does for all folks is build that understanding that Kay's talking about, right? We're at the end of the day, we're talking about empathy, right? Empathy for other people. And when you deeply understand the historical context in which you know, a people have arrived to this point, it's really hard not to be empathetic, you know, as you talk with someone else's experience, right? And it helps you understand their experience. So I just think I agree, reading, and at the end of the day, if we all had more empathy for each other, all different types of people from all walks of life, I think we would all be in a better place. So those are the two I would agree.
Awesome. And lastly, Pastor Turner.
Wow, it's just been some wonderful answers and information. I do agree that education is key, and when I say education, not just the system of education, but like Sean said, educating ourselves. Because just because we're Black doesn't mean we understand the depths of the issues. You know, sometimes we experience it, but we don't even understand the depths of the issue. So living it out every day. I think one thing we need to do is be open and honest about our feelings. Be open and honest about our experiences, because our experiences are our experience. Our experiences are all, even on this panel, are different, but we share a commonality in that we have been a part of or been impacted by systematic racism in our country. We've been impacted by what happened in 1619. Some people say, well, I didn't live back there. Well, no, we still see the effects of slavery and mass incarceration and educational inequities even today. And so every day we need to educate ourselves and have those conversations with our friends that don't look like us. Let them in. Right after George Floyd, for about I think about 8 to 10 weeks, we had discussions every week on how folks were feeling. So we opened that up to young people, to all kind of folks, even around the country. That's the good thing about technology, right? To have those discussions about the Black experience, how we're feeling about seeing that police violence, how we're feeling about the unrest, and where the anger and the hurt comes from. Because a lot of times people who don't look like us don't understand, why are you mad about that, right? But how we get past that is that we have those conversations, is that we spend time, like you said, over tea and having lunch. One thing I appreciate about our community, especially Eastvale, I remember Pastor Mark Lee, we went from Vantage Point, we went to lunch, and he just wanted to have a conversation on race relations because he couldn't relate. He has African Americans in his congregation, and he wanted to know, from my point of view, how he could best reach those and speak to those that were among his sphere of influence. It had, like Dr. Goen said, empathy. Empathy goes a long way. I may not understand everything about your experience, but I can listen and I can seek to understand and become an ally. And I think if we get to that point where we have empathy, then we can start to communicate. Then people might be able to see the mechanism of racism that are going on in our country and become an ally instead of an adversary.
Wow, thank you. Thank you all so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I completely agree with statements that have been made as far as knowing our history is so important when it comes to deciding next steps and understanding, where we take our community. But I want to be respectful of time, and I know we did go a little over, so I think that, Gina, what do you think? I think we'll go ahead and close the conversation.
Yes.
I'm so happy. I'm sorry, Alex, can you hear us? Can you?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm actually at work. During this conversation, I've been moving around the station because I'm at work, trying to find quiet places.
Oh.
But I agree with everything said. I think that we should apply a lot of the past, a lot of our history in our daily lives. I think it starts at home. I think we should actively pursue learning other cultures, learning our differences, our similarities. I think we should actively pursue teaching our kids about all the different cultures, make them more well-rounded, and help get rid of those implicit biases that they see from TV or music or movies, or like their great grandparents that thought a certain way because their grandparents thought a certain way. Me personally, I'm kind of in a unique situation, being a Black guy that's an ex-baseball player that is a police officer. So imagine the calls I got in last year doing the George Floyd, doing the police brutality protests, from everybody, community members, sports people, just all around, because most people know I'm pretty level-headed. I'm not going to answer from emotion. So having that unique position, I'm able to bridge those gaps, kind of show a different side of what's going on out there, and here you go. And I take pride in that. But so, like I said, it takes us. We'll have to go start at home, teach the kids the right way, to love each other and to reach out to the neighbors and build that relationship. And if you think about it, in school, kids get along. It's just when they get home, the parents don't get along. So kids go to school, they play soccer together, baseball together, football together. It doesn't matter if you're green, purple, or blue, but they get home and mom and dad or whatever may say, hey, we don't like them or we don't get along with them. So we have to do better as adults, and I think that's where it starts. We have to do better to train them, because kids aren't born with any kind of biases. They're not born prejudiced. Kids are born loving each other. They wake up and they want to kiss you and say I love you, and that's how they. If we can continue them to grow that way, I think things will get better.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so happy that this whole discussion, conversation has been recorded so that we can share this with anyone who is not able to join us right now. So I thank you all so much for joining us and for your time. It really meant a lot to me personally. So thank you so much for being here. And Gina, I don't know if you have any final thoughts as well.
Yes, I want to say thank you to our city council for allowing us to allocate city time and city resources. Thank you to each of our panelists. Thank you to Mr. Brian Jones, who is supportive of that. I cannot say in my history as a leader in civic government that all cities would allow something like this to take place. So hats off to Mr. Jones and to our city council, to each of you. And also just to those who are panelists, I know we didn't get a chance to open it up to them to have questions, but I would invite you to take an opportunity to have conversations. There may be some questions that you heard about things that you heard here today. And so I would ask you to have that opportunity to take time for tea, or take time for a burger, or take time for whatever it is that you like, and have those conversations. So I would conclude as the city's one of the first managers of African Americans to be here in Eastvale, it's just a significant time that we're living in. Eastvale has a significant role in that, and I encourage you to continue the conversation beyond our hour that we shared here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
This came up with the questions, reached out to all of you. Thank you to Mark also, who helped out with setting up the electronics. So there were a lot of behind the scenes, but hats off to Miss Anissa. Anissa, I applaud you for stepping down.
Thank you. Wonderful job.
Outstanding job. You're a model to many. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone again so much. And again, this video was recorded, so hopefully I'll be able to share that with you all, but thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you to our listeners for our first
month
celebration. So thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'll take care. God bless.
Bye. You too.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.